All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today. Tech tools and how-tos, things you should know. So we typically do these for our co-managed and managed services clients to make them aware of the different tool sets that we utilize at Center and help, and especially because a lot of these tool sets are the tools that you get access to by being one of our clients. So today we're going to cover Liongard. Liongard's meant for managed service providers. It allows us to pull in different information. It does automated asset discovery, inventory. It helps us detect configuration change. So not only can we pull in the different configurations of, let's say, your 365 environment, your firewall, but we can also track the changes as well, compare different points of time. We can do monitoring based off of these different events. It allows us to automate documentation. So it allows us ultimately to be a little more efficient, standardization, and really be able to dive in between our different clients a lot faster and find the information we need. So I'm Todd Smith, the CTO at Center Technologies. I will be your host. And from Liongard today, we have Kyle Chandler, not to be confused with the coach from Friday Night Lights. I'm sure you'd never get that. Welcome, Kyle.
I wish.
So as a reminder, you should have a Q&A. If not, feel free to post in the chat. But if you have any questions, feel free to post, and you can feel free to ask during. And if we don't get to it during, we should have some time for formal Q&A at the end. So this and other events will be posted on our YouTube page. Feel free to like and subscribe. It is youtube.com/centertechs with an S at the end. Thank you, Emily, putting that in the chat. So let's dive in. Cobb, you want to take it away from here, sir?
Absolutely. I'll start sharing my screen. Just let me know if you see that, Todd.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, appreciate the intro, Todd, and thank you everybody for coming in today. It's good afternoon for me, but maybe good morning for some folks, depending on where you reside in the country or elsewhere. And it's a beautiful sunny day in Southwest Florida where I'm located, or in other words, it's hot and humid like every other day in the summer down here. But we're getting through, and I appreciate everybody taking some time to meet with us. So I am going to show you a few things in the platform. Todd gave a nice kind of brief intro, including the fact that I am not the more famous Kyle Chandler, but that's all right. You're stuck with me nonetheless. So I just kind of wanted to set the tone and give everybody a little bit of background on why Liongard exists and why we appreciate our partnerships like with Center Technologies and how it all kind of works. And so I'll set the tone by saying, let's talk about a little bit about the evolution that we've gone through. And back in the day, your toolkit was probably pretty straightforward. You had a couple of Windows servers, maybe running in a closet. You had some firewall appliances, probably the size of a VCR. You had antivirus on workstations. You had some backup servers that you pray wouldn't fail. And for the most part, that was about it, right? Maybe a few group policy scripts or Exchange on-prem. And, if the firewall was set up, the antivirus was green, you could probably sleep at night. And, security in those days was really just perimeter based. And the philosophy was just build a wall, strong wall, keep the bad guys out. We trusted the way the wall was built. We trusted everything inside the network. Patch Tuesday was a thing. And it was manageable, right? We didn't have the shadow IT, the cloud, zero trust. None of that was really in the vocabulary, right? And so if you fast forward today, right, and you look at our guy here with the phone in front of him, it's all changed, right? The game has changed, and it's a whole different battlefield for us. So, you got to think about cloud sprawl nowadays, container security, identities and access governance, right? Everything's on mobile, you got IoT devices, all these different things. And let's not even forget about the fact that, ransomware is now as a service. And so the users are everywhere. They're at home, they're in coffee shops. I'm at home now. I kind of wish I was at a coffee shop. I could use another cup of coffee, but, they're on their phones and data is just everywhere. Right. So the network perimeter is completely evaporated. And in fact, we're really no longer just defending with walls, right? We're defending the data in motion, different identities, these complex integrations across these platforms. And, And that's really why, we appreciate our partnerships with Center Technologies, and they look to us to kind of get together and how do we address that, right? And so this evolution really just didn't happen overnight. It crept in, and innovation's necessary to change with it. And, let's be honest, there were a bunch of painful breaches that happened along the way. So, in today's conversation, it's not just about what changed, right? We're gonna talk about how we and us as security professionals or IT professionals, need to meet, not compete, and we need to rethink kind of our assumptions, adopt a new strategy, and lead with resilience. And in a world where the attack surface is really shifting, and I'll talk about what does attack surface really even mean in a minute here. We know that the game has changed, and we have to change along with it. So, again, as I mentioned, what is the attack surface and how has it changed over time? And so you can look here, and some of you probably have experienced this. If you walked into any, IT expo show floor, I mean, it's insane, right? We've got hundreds, if not thousands, of different vendors out there all screaming, I can help you, right? And a lot of them can, right? But they can be point products. They can fix one niche gap, and so you look at you walk away and you may sign up with a couple of these vendors, and then all of a sudden you're the person in the middle here, and you're like, wow, I've got stuff for my endpoints, I've got stuff from the network, I got stuff in the cloud. Did I have it set up right? What am I covering? Where's the gaps? And so it leaves you very confused about what does this all mean, right? And what is the balancing act? And now that I've expanded all of these other tools that I have, how big is the attack surface, right? The blast radius, what's open to potential breaches down the road, and how do I know, right? How do I stop hoping, and how do I start knowing? And so if you think about the world we live in right now, I think this picture kind of sums it up. It's a world of low visibility, right? If none. And if you think about people driving on this road, they can't see 50 feet in front of them. Me personally, I'm doing 90 in the left lane. If you're one of those people that's doing 5 below the speed limit in the left lane, I'm sorry, but you deserve to be in jail. And it's okay, drive slow, but drive slow on the right side. I'm doing 90. I got a place to go. I got a sense of urgency here. But if I'm driving in this fog, I have no idea what's on the other side of that fog, right? What's waiting for me? And so this lack of visibility into all of the attack surface alone is really the world that we're living in, right? And so how do we gain that visibility, and some of the things that Todd was mentioning when he introduced us, and like how do we uncover that? How do we know what's going on within our ecosystem? And with the visibility, you got to think about balance is really key, right? And so if, as Mr. Miyagi says here, right, if there's any Karate Kid fans in the room, you got to find that balance. And so over the years, the evolution of the attack surface has also led us to shifting one way and leaning away from the other way, right? And so if you think about focusing too much in one realm, right, and focusing on, what is the sexy product right now that's fixing that one massive breach that we saw in the news. Okay, let's divulge our time, effort, resources, and money there, right? And so, what we're working on with Center Technologies and our MSPs, right, is helping them find that balance. And how do we shift it from, Daniel's son here not leaning too far right, dumping the boat, and having him and Mr. Miyagi need life jackets, right? And so how do we get back to the point of like, it's not just one side of the ball that we need to invest time, money, and resources on, right? That's important. It's always important, but there is that finite balance between the two. And if there is any Karate Kid fans in the group, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn afterwards, and I can introduce you to our chief revenue officer. He loves Karate Kid and loves to debate the scoring system at the end of the movie in terms of what a kick to the head or a punch to the head really means, and if there was some cheating going on. So any curiosity around that, we can connect and talk about it later.
Russo also was the bully, if you look back on it. That's
absolutely
debatable, but there's
a lot of debatable topics that go on with that movie, and he'll sit there and talk anybody's ear off about how the scoring system's either rigged or the movie was inaccurate. But nevertheless, I don't know if there's anybody that's familiar on here today with the cyber defense matrix, but at the core of it, you can think about the 5 nouns on the left side and then the 5 verbs at the top, and how to address those nouns. And so really this is built around, if anybody's familiar with the NIST cybersecurity framework: identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover, with actually a governance component that's included in there as well. And so it's this ideology, right, of how do we basically summarize the world we're living in today to break it down. And how do I go to, again, those IT expos or talk to folks or meet with Center Technologies and say, okay, I have this amount of devices, and talk to me about how do I know those are my devices, right? How do I protect them? And then how do I ultimately detect if something happens, respond to that and recover, right? And so that's why you work with folks like the professionals in the world, like Center Technologies, to do that. But ultimately, it comes down to there is so much going on here. And how do I really know, again, out of these five matrices, where's the focus, right? Where do we sit? How do we find that balance? And so for anybody that is familiar with the terminology around the point of boom, right of boom or left of boom, boom being the point of really a breach happening. If you're familiar or not, I urge you to either in the chat take a guess, type it out, or in your head take a guess on where on this matrix you think the point of boom is really addressed. Where do we draw the line in terms of what is considered trying to prevent boom from happening, and then how do we ultimately respond to boom if it does, right? So take your guesses, type it out of the chat if you want. And ultimately, if you guessed right after identify and protect, you were right, right? And so what you look at is say, okay, if I'm going to not only look at a framework, how do I apply that framework to what I'm doing to, clean up the house and what's in order? And then how do I ultimately, because we're at that point now where ultimately something is going to happen, right? And that's why we've shifted into that right of boom mentality, is that we lean too far into, you know what, things are going to happen, right? We moved away from going to our vendors and saying, tell me how many nines of accuracy you have, right? 99.99999, right? And everybody wanted to flex how many nines they had. But ultimately, no matter how many nines you did have, it's not 100%, right? And so ultimately, we started saying as an industry is like 100% is not there. So I just have to accept that something's going to happen. What do I do when it does happen? What's my plan, right? How quickly am I going to be able to detect, respond, and recover from that? And that's just leaning way too far right. Why are we giving up on the fact that we can't just start making ourselves reducing the blast radius and controlling that attack surface where this can happen? And that's where the left of boom comes into play, and where this comes to fruition in our own little slide here. Quick story on where this came about. Our founder, Joe Alapat at Liongard, came up with this. And so he's taken the ideology and the framework of NIST and kind of applied a few different components to it, including if anybody's military or knows anything about military tactics or processes, observe, orient, decide, and act. An OODA loop is, he chatted with a veteran at one point, talked through his ideology and said, that's an OODA loop, Joe. And so he's taken NIST and approached it in a way. And I actually had the pleasure of seeing some of this unfold for the first time before it became a slide. We were in Vegas, and after a long night on the casino floor, it was 6 a.m. in our Airbnb we were staying for the event, and I came out to get a glass of water, and Joe found a whiteboard at this Airbnb somehow, and he was whiteboarding this entire thing at 6 a.m. And so he pulled me over. He's like, check this out. And so I learned all about it. And so again, for anybody, Joe's a visionary. Connect with him on LinkedIn as well and see some of his content. But he built this out with the purpose of, again, there's a lot we can still do to reduce the blast radius and look at attack surface, right? And that's all left of boom technology to say, at the end of the day, if we look at and trace back where these breaches and how they're happening, a majority of them are happening from things like a vulnerability, right? It's handled by a patch, right? A misconfiguration, which can be human error. And so if we can look at what is that attack surface look like and how do we harden that, it starts to reduce, the more and more breaches that ultimately do happen. Now, again, nothing's 100%, so we can't give up on the right side, and that's where that balancing act is happening, right? And so we find, we don't need to, give up on one side just to go all in on the other, and that's the concept of finding balance in the world today. And to really just kind of summarize that in a really easy way to explain this and kind of explain Liongard at the core and our partnership with Center is, you think about either buy a new home or today, you say, I want to invest in, home security, right? You think about alarm systems, you think about, motion sensors, you think about all of these different things that you can buy into. And at the core of it, you're looking for, I'm going to spend a ton of money so that nobody can penetrate, my house and break in. And if they do, My alarm system is committed to me that I have a five-minute response time. The police officers are right around the corner, right? They've committed to me they'll be there in 5 minutes. That's still 5 minutes, right? And so no matter how much you invest in ultimately saying, I'm going to do all of these things, including a response to somebody ultimately breaking in and the money that you spend, you could do that all day long, but nobody's just going to walk out their front door and leave the door unlocked after they spend all that money, right? So why do we need to do that? And why do we need to sacrifice one side of IT and one side of security to overcompensate, right? Why can't they meet and not compete and say, you're still going to lock your door, you're still going to lock your windows, and you can still have that security and alarm system at the end of the day. And that's what we're doing, right? And that's why we're partnering Center. So another really easy way to look at this is, if you think about home inspections, right? They're typically done at closing time. So, you go to close on your house, you're selling your house, you're gonna do a home inspection before you can close. And that home inspection comes around and all of a sudden, they determine you need a new roof, right? You got leaky pipes. The leaky pipes then cause some flooding. You didn't even know about it. And the baseboards or, everything is rotted out in your bathroom. So now you need to redo your bathroom, redo your baseboards. All of these things come to fruition, and now you got to spearhead that all at once in one project just to be able to close on your house. Wouldn't it have been nice if you had a daily recurring home inspection, right? So that inspection could have surfaced, hey, there's a leaky pipe. We need to fix that or else it's going to lead to rotting. So that project there with redoing your bathroom didn't even need to happen if we had known that leaky pipe was going on, right? Or maybe we surfaced the pipe, a year or two before we surfaced the roof. So you don't need to cough up all that dough up front just to fix everything, right? And eat into what you were hoping was going to be some profit off of the sale of your home. So if you could think about Liongard and Center Technologies going out and doing that home inspection for your ecosystem, right? We're looking at inspecting your systems and pulling that back to say, what is the configuration state of those systems, right? Where are we at? Did something change? If it changed, do we know about it? And we do, right? And that's how we're going out and doing these inspections on your system and pulling that information back. Did someone forget to lock the window? Did someone forget to lock the door? Did a teenager turn off the motion sensors to sneak out the back and go out at night, right? Think about how many times we turn off MFA for folks just to make their lives easier and, work with their productivity suite a little bit easier on a day-to-day basis, right? Was MFA turned off? How do we know it was turned off? When was it turned off? All these questions are just up in the air, and we hope. There's a lot of hoping that goes on in this space, but how do we really know? And Center Technologies and Liongard, we know, right? And that's the value in the partnership again, or else you're just ultimately mopping up floors. The picture actually gives me a funny. Everybody kind of has their own funny IT related story from over the years, and although I've only been in the cybersecurity software space for 10 years, I've had the pleasure of, chatting with individuals who have been in the space in IT for 30, 40 years. And so I love to hear about different stories. And so one individual was telling me that they had this issue where they had a client, they were a managed service provider, and they had a client, and every Thursday at 10 a.m., servers would go down, right? Every single Thursday, second Thursday of the month. And they try to figure out things like, you know what, we're just going to we'll send a tech out, and they're just going to wait there because it happens at every time. And so the tech goes out and sits in front of the blinking lights, puts his hands on his knees and watches. 10 a.m. turns around, door opens up, cleaning lady comes in, unplugs the servers, plugs in her vacuum and starts vacuuming, right? And so their fix to that was, let's put a lock on the door and not let the cleaning lady come in and unplug the server. So there's always a funny story, and the mop kind of reminded me of that. So last piece here before I jump into the platform and just kind of show you how some of this comes to fruition. We mentioned NIST in terms of security frameworks. I also want to talk briefly about CIS and why that's relevant to what Center Technologies and Liongard are doing together with the partnership. I'll go ahead and assume that not everybody in the room is familiar with CIS, so I'll just kind of give a brief overview of why we're even talking about that and why this relates to the discussion and demo. But ultimately, the CIS controls, they were developed by the Center of Internet Security, right? And they're a set of prioritized best practices that were designed to help organizations really protect their systems and their data from the most common cyber threats, right? So if you think about them as a cybersecurity playbook, and it was written by experts, and it was based on real world attacks that are happening every day. And why should we care about that? It's because it's not theoretical, right? These are based on real threat data, and it means that they're focused on what's really working. And even more so, they're prioritized, which is a huge deal, right? If you ever looked at any of the security frameworks, even that matrix that I showed earlier, where you walk into that show floor that I mentioned, it's where do I start, right? And CIS is that prioritized list that tells you where to start, right? Each control is listed by prioritization of where you should focus on step by step. And ultimately they're practical, they're scalable, and they're proven, right? So if you implement just the first few, and you start to know what assets you have in the wild, you apply some secure configurations and you harden your configuration state, and you start controlling who has access to that, you're already cutting off a big chunk of the attack surface, right? If you look here, the first 4 out of the 5 controls of CIS are related to just finding out what is out there in the wild, right? You can't secure or manage what you don't know is there. And that's the concept that CIS is trying to explain. That's the concept that managed service providers like Center Technologies and partnering with us has recognized. And so that's why we build out the asset inventory that I'll show you in a second to know what's in the wild so that we can, in fact, secure it and manage it. And so, they're flexible. Again, the controls, they're flexible. And so at any size or complexity, whether you're small, you're bound by compliance or not, any shape or size, the CIS control works for you, right? And so the big takeaway really ultimately is it's going to give you a clear prioritized roadmap on how to improve that security posture. And that's where Center Technology fixes and works with you on making sure we're aligning to that posture, and they use the Liongard platform on the back end to assist and start knowing and stop knowing. So I'll jump into the platform now and cruise around a couple of items to show you this in kind of real time. Stop sharing this side.
And then we did get a few questions.
Okay. Happy to pause now.
Yeah, absolutely. You can start bringing that up. Let's see. One of them I know we can answer pretty quick is what advanced scripting or API functionalities are available for MSPs to automate custom data collection and reporting beyond Liongard's out-of-the-box capabilities. So just to give you an idea, we have a lot of different integrations utilizing the APIs into Liongard and can automate just about anything based off of whatever values or metrics that we're able to collect. So for instance, we utilize DNS filter pretty heavily to make sure that our different clients, or they're filtering out malicious DNS requests. For that to work properly, we have to have the public IP added to each network for the domain controllers or IoT devices are making requests from. We're actually utilizing Liongard to help pull in a lot of that data. So because Liongard has hooks into the firewall, has hooks into our network monitoring tool as well, our RMM, we can see the public IPs and automatically push those into DNS filter. So you got a lot of different options. Anything you can make a metric in Liongard, you can automate based off of whatever value. So a lot of different options there.
Yep. Absolutely. Any other questions? I'm still working on pulling this up, and Teams is messing with me.
Yeah, I think you'll probably cover this one. It's how do Liongard's new platform capability specifically enhance proactive threat detection and remediation workflows within an MSP's security stack?
Yeah.
So,
yep. Great question. So, what we're doing, and I'll show some of this stuff here now that I've pulled up, but we are moving towards, at the end of the day, the shift in the world of IT managed services or otherwise is how can we automate more and more, and how can we stay on top of being more in near real time, right? And so what Liongard has traditionally done, like I mentioned, is we take those inspections or x-rays of your systems typically 3 times a day. And again, we alert, or we can have a timeline back to what's changed in between those inspections. But we're moving towards the ability to, in near real time, events coming up, such as, privileged user getting added to Microsoft 365, right? How do we not only just help MSPs surface that, report on it, and alert on it, because at the end of the day, it's more alerts, right? And everybody's got alert fatigue. And so, how do we add less to this screen over here of just pure alerts? And how do we just say, if a privileged user gets added on a Saturday at 10 a.m., I want, my system hardened to be able to remediate that and then tell me the remediation was taking place. And then on Monday, when somebody goes in, they review that and say, actually, this privileged user should have this capability, and allow that, rather than waiting from Saturday when we can alert on that today in near real time to say, privileged user gets added at, 1:26 p.m. Eastern time, 1:27, it's in Liongard. But then somebody has to then go in and review that and make sure, and how much time was taken in between reviewing that event and actually taking action on it. So we're moving in the steps. We've got integrations with automation tools out there today. We've worked with other MSPs to build out some automation based on the metrics we have. But as a platform whole, we're moving into a near real-time monitoring capability of these systems, not just the inspections, and then also the hardening and remediation capabilities behind what we're surfacing. So great question.
Yep. Doreen asks, how does Liongard's platform handle multi-tenancy data isolation for MSPs, managing numerous distinct client environments from a single interface? They set up each as an environment. So we can also limit permissions to environments so that you're only able to see, so our co-managed clients can only see their environment. So anytime we set up an integration, we're able to, select this Meraki network is this environment. So it's separated by environments.
Yep. Great question. That's what I pulled up here. Good question, and exactly true, Todd. We've got the multi-tenancy. I mean, Liongard was built off of working with MSPs traditionally. So all of our features, functionality, platform have been purpose-built for MSPs to leverage. Multi-tenancy is a must-have. So from my permissions in the demo environment now, you can see that I've got global admin capabilities. So I've got the privilege to see all of my different environments and drill into them. So this is what the multi-tenancy view would look like. And then we have, the role-based access controls to be able to define different roles and see what each individual has access to based on their role that they have. And then this is me clicking into an individual environment customer that I'll show more on, but I'll keep it paused. Any more questions? You're good questions, Todd. Anything else that we have before walking through a couple of things?
Yeah, let's see. I know one of the new features that you'll likely cover is the network monitoring.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody asked, what are specific capabilities and limitations of network monitoring features concerning the layer 2 and 3 visibility and protocol analysis?
Yep. Yeah. And so I'll just talk through that now too. So right now, Liongard has the ability to do network discovery across the board. So you're able to probe down and determine devices that are actually connected to the network. So if I show you, we were talking through some of this, so I'll just show you the full asset inventory section of what we're building out. We're not only just surfacing identities, but applying devices and accounts to those specific identities, right? So we're building out a full asset inventory to go out and say, these are the devices in the wild that I know are connected to the network, and what's the status behind them, right? I mean, these are just certain metrics in here, like MFA status for each individual identity. But if you drill into like an Adele as an identity, you'll able to see the sources that we're pulling that identity from, AD 365, and then dark web monitoring to see if she was involved in any breaches. It's got the identity information. You can actually run a AI-based summary on that specific identity. And so what we're able to do in perpetuity with MSPs or Center Technologies is give the easy to view summary, executive summary on that specific user. So we're able to say, hey, look, tell me about Adele, basically. And this AI summary will pull up the identity, a little bit of an overview, some finding and observations around it, some lists of concerns, again, routing back to CIS controls and NIST baked in security framework. And then some possible recommended actions, right, for Adele, right? If things like EDR wasn't deployed on, her endpoint on her workstation, right? That might be a recommendation to say you might want to go in and ensure EDR is deployed. So all these different components are able to be run in just a kind of an overview. So your non-power technical users, you're are able to actually view and see what are those lists of concerns and understand it in kind of more plain text versus the full data print or metric. So scaling down into the devices, we're able to it's getting released this week. We're going to be able to monitor the device status. So again, up-down monitoring of devices connected to the network. Again, that's coming out this week, so it's not fully baked out, fully fledged in there. But we'll be able to start surfacing the device statuses that are eventually connected to the network. So right now we're going out, probing, pulling back, and discovering devices connected to the network. So network discovery is there, but the true monitoring of the up-down monitoring of the status of those devices is coming out this week for us. So we'll have that. And whoever asked the question too, happy to, when that's fully launched, dive into that a little bit more around, SNMP and what we're doing around surfacing that. Some insight into where we're moving as well, as we're going to have some components around full network backups and then actually mapping out the network as well down the road. But those are future items coming down. So right now, this is what we have in the asset inventory from a network perspective. Good question. Awesome. All right, so I'll show a couple things here. Time check. I'm gonna do it on my clock isn't showing up. I'm gonna do it on time, Todd.
12:32. We got till 12:45. We got about 13 or so minutes.
Awesome. All right, so a couple things I'll show. Again, I'll run through this quickly. This is, you click into a individual customer. This is going to be the initial view, right? So you're able to capture this individual customer's view really quickly. You're able to see, the different systems that we're going out and inspecting, right? So you're able to see, what are we inspecting in the cloud? What are we inspecting on the network? We're able to pull back, AWS is here. We got over 84 different inspectors out in the wild today. 88 actually as of today, and over 100 different integrations to other tools out there, ticketing systems, PSAs, as well as like automation tools. But just as in terms of the actual inspections, there's over 88 now. So again, we're inspecting cloud, network, all the way on down to the workstations and pulling that information back. So this is just the overview of look into the initial customer. What I'll show you guys here from a risk perspective is we built out, and this is relatively new, I'd say within the last 6 to 12 months, we fully kind of baked this out. And so this tool, the cyber dashboard, it's hardened based on specifics that we worked on with cyber insurance brokers in the space to pull back and surface data that's relevant to getting approved for a cyber insurance policy, right? And so for many organizations, right, applying for cybersecurity insurance is, a real necessary step in managing the risk of your organization. But it's also not a very straightforward process, if we're being honest, right? So especially from an IT perspective, most cyber insurers are going to require you to complete a detailed security assessment before they'll even consider offering you the coverage. The assessments are, really extensive at times, covering areas from endpoint protection, access management, MFA, what's the patching cadence look like, what are your backup protocols, all of these different things, right? So it's a challenge unless, your environment, your ecosystem is well documented, right, and pulls together this information, and or else that could be super time consuming and complex, right, to do all of that. And that's why we partner with MSPs and Center Technologies to streamline that, automate the documentation process. But also, instead of teams finding themselves scrambling to gather that data across all these systems and tools and departments, pulled together in the assessment, which can result obviously in delays in getting approval timelines and impact actually the quality of the coverage that you get offered. It's where having a centralized dashboard, right, or platform can make a huge difference. And that's where we said we had the data, right? We're a data lake of information that we're pulling back from these systems. Why don't we help MSPs help their customers go through this process, right? And give them this dashboard that we know is what the brokers and the insurers are looking at. And just imagine having that system that could help you collect, present the required data during that application process. But it also continuously monitors that environment and flags anything that changes, right? That could also impact your, insured posture. For example, you were approved, based on the MFA that you had enabled across your critical systems, but that control later gets disabled. We all know this happens on a key application, and a good dashboard would probably alert you, that lapse that happened, right, and affects your compliance, or worse, it leads to a coverage gap, right? Somebody gets MFA disabled, something happens, God forbid, and wouldn't it be nice to have that change be alerted on and have a timeline back to what changed and when did it change? Ultimately, it's really about shifting from that reactive mode to a proactive stance, right? Cyber insurance providers, they want to see that you're not only just meeting those requirements today when you go to apply for insurance, but that you had the visibility and control to actually maintain that posture going forward, right? What's changed from when you were provided the policy and when you actually needed to maybe use it, right? And so by giving IT teams, giving MSPs that single source of truth, you're not only streamlining that application process, but you're actually setting yourself up for having the stronger renewals, better rates with your providers, and really, having an effective risk management, cyber risk management overall. So if you drill into, this dashboard itself, right, you can see right now at the top, it's surfacing, authentication and MFA in the cloud with 365. How many of my privileged users, have MFA enforcement there? 3 out of 6. That's no good, right? You've got 6 privileged users in the wild. Not only is it good for cyber insurance, right, but it's good to know this stuff, right? I guarantee you a lot of people are hoping that they know how many privileged users have MFA enforcement or conditional access policies enabled, but I guarantee you not everybody knows, right? And it's turning that hope into knowing. Looking at quickly, what does the email hygiene look like? The email security hygiene look like, right? Is SPF, DKIM, and DMARC found there on the domains? Just simple stuff, right? And looking at what's the website security look like? TLS and SSL certs are up to date and they're existing. Again, is EDR deployed on my workstations, right? It's funny. I've worked for endpoint security companies in the past, and back in the day, it used to be you got to just have endpoint protection enabled, or you got to have AVAS on your workstations, and then it really shifted into you need to be working with an endpoint company that's giving you full endpoint detection and response. And I imagine at some point having the managed detection and response is going to be some sort of requirement where you've got the security operations team actually monitoring that. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes, but that's what we update this with, right? What are they looking at? This isn't just, do you have basic ABS deployed? Do you have EDR deployed in your workstations, right? And then being able to drill in to see, who are those users that don't have EDR deployed. And so this obviously isn't a customer that Center Technologies is managing, right? This is a demo environment. So you can see there's a lot of red and orange. Center Technologies exists with the partnership to make sure we bring you to green for not only, again, for if you were trying to apply for cyber insurance, but what does the hardening of your systems look like across the board? What's important to you? So this dashboard's been out there. I'd say the other piece that I wanted to mention here as we come up on time is I want to show you these. So these are new within the last 2 months. Is we've had integrations to surface the data and other reporting tools. We've now in application rolled out the ability to report on all of this data in a visualized way. So just like that cyber risk dashboard, that one's hardened. You can't make changes to it because again, we've heard from brokers on what they're looking for. But we said, a lot of our partners and customers, they want to be able to add a few different components of what they care about based on what does a secure environment and ecosystem look like, right? And it may go beyond what that cyber insurance cyber risk dashboard looks like. So how do we not only give you pre-built dashboards to look at that asset inventory section that I showed you, make it visual so you can see your users in the wild, right? Who's out there, who doesn't have MFA registration, privileged users across across a few different customers. That's why the list is high there. But give me a breakdown of all my Microsoft licensing, right? All these things that we surface in terms of data are really relevant to your power users of Liongard and our partners. But a lot of this data is relevant to, types of situations that you may be meeting with and saying, hey, show me, right? Show me what's going on back there, right? Talk to me, Center Technologies, what's going on back there? Tell me about what you guys are doing to harden our systems, right? And allow Center Technologies or folks to just visually show you what's the value we're bringing to the table, right? These are all things that you would hope you'd know, but you may not, right? What's the easy way to surface from all these systems in one location and not jumping into each different thing like a Microsoft tenant, jumping into your firewalls, right? How do you know all of your firewalls are configured to your standard set of configurations, right? How do you know?
Yep.
You may hope, but Center Technologies and Liongard know, right? So our partners in the wild, they know their firewalls are configured properly. If you look at just, last year, Gartner came out and said 99% of firewall breaches occurred due to a misconfiguration. Misconfiguration can be a couple different things, but somebody's changing the configuration. If somebody didn't basically configure it the way that is your standard, right? That's a misconfiguration. And how do we know? How do we know it's misconfigured? How do we know that changed? How do we know it wasn't meeting our standard, but then changed tomorrow? And when do we know? When were we alerted? When do we have a time frame? That's what Liongard and Center Technologies is focusing on, is stop hoping and start knowing what's changing, so that you can have an impact on what could be a potential misconfiguration and what's the blast radius of my attack surface. So there's some other reports in here, but I won't go into every single one of them. Yeah.
One quick thing, even not from a security aspect, but just licensing and cost perspective. One alert we built out a while back was looking for active or 365 licenses that are assigned, but to disabled users, to help prevent our clients from buying more licenses but they're not needed. There's very few scenarios where you actually need a license assigned to a disabled account. So even that just helps our clients better utilize their dollars spent on licensing, so they're not just buying more.
It is. Yeah. And it's a great point, Todd, right? It's like, not only what's dormant or inactive, and what type of licensing do I have, right? If you look at that, do I need 10 E5 licensing? What are those 10 users using the full components of E5, right? I mean, I used to work for a company that resold Microsoft. And so time and time again, customers have struggled with, what functionality is included in all of these different Microsoft packages. They change the nomenclature all the time, right? And so the MSPs are the experts there, and the MSPs not only can talk through it, but they can surface it and show their customers what they're doing, right? You're questioning, you're a customer, you're saying, hey, Todd or Center, tell me about what my Microsoft user count looked like, in March, because you charged me for 34 users, but I think we only had 30. It's like, no, we could actually show you real quick. You had 34, right? And then we could drill into who those users were. And are you telling me that some of these people don't work for you anymore? Let's have a discussion around that. But we know that you had 34 active licenses, right? And having that chart, having that visualization, that data there, so that you can know and go back and have that discussion that is strategic as a partnership. And you're not, you're sitting there and you're saying, look, we don't want to overcharge you, right? Let's talk about your usage. Let's talk about your Microsoft licensing. And this is just basic, this is just around the licensing at the core, right? Billing and licensing, what type of licensing. But again, these are just 3 pre-built. These dashboards are customized. So if you want to get in here and chat with either, Liongard or Center about what you'd like to see in these visual insights components are fully customizable, so we can interchange some of the data. As long as we could surface it, we can pull it in this report. And there's a really good chance that we could surface it with over the 88 inspectors that we have. So I know we're coming up on the hard stop here, so I want to make sure that we leave it any open-ended questions there. I went through everything pretty quickly. One last piece that I will say is, I'm sure everybody on here can relate to the AI bubble, right, and the AI push, and there's a saying that someone at our company has, and it's like, there's the AI and then there's AI, right? And we're trying to do the AI without the quotations, and why we're able to do that with our partners and our MSPs is we have the data, right? And so the companies that have the data, you can see all the data that we can pull back here, the metrics, the data print, we're able to execute on and make that data more consumable. I've been joking around and created my own word, userability. So jamming together user and the usability of the platform. How do we make the data more the usability, increase that and enhance that experience? And so we've already done that with the AI asset inventory section, the insights that we do, but we're actually moving to changing this universal search bar down the road in the next couple months that will help our MSP partners navigate the data or even interact with our customers a little bit more. Is how do you interact and have a contextualized conversation with the data in this platform, right? How do I interact with this platform like it's a ChatGPT, a Grok, and go ahead and in the chat, enter in your favorite, AI platform that you use on a day-to-day basis. But how can I just ask Liongard, talk to me about, the security posture of my environment right now. Talk to me about where I align with the CIS controls. What am I covering? Where do I need to work on? And then set that next 90 days of what you should be focused on to really bring you into hardening your state, your security posture. So that's all I have. I'll stop sharing, and we can answer any questions if we want to, or wrap things up. But I do appreciate everybody's time and listening to this, and always open to any further discussions down the road. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Kyle Chandler at Liongard, not Kyle Chandler with the resume that has actor on it.
Thank you all for joining. Be respectful of everybody's time. Feel free to drop, because I know we're a little over, but we will be on for a couple minutes. If anyone has any questions, feel free to post in Q&A. We can try to knock them out real quick for you.
And if anybody's curious how we got these t-shirts, there's a good reason, because this is what our partners and our customers are telling us. So it's there's truth to it, right? And so more than happy to talk through and chat and sync up with whoever your point of contact is at Center, and talk more about how we can save your assets at the end of the day.
Yep. Going to that point, even like the most simple of things, we had a client that accidentally ran a PowerShell command that they were trying to replace 365 licensing. They accidentally removed all licensing. With Liongard, pretty quickly and easily, we could see exactly what users had what licenses earlier that day, and really quickly grab that data and reassign them. So like even the most basic of things, just having point in time configuration tracking is helpful, even outside of security posture. So very, very, very helpful in that. Other things we've used is Meraki firewalls, or firewalls in general, being able to see geofencing, right? If they're licensed for it, but also if it's implemented, to make sure they're blocking some of the more countries prone to malicious activity, especially if they're not doing business there. So those are a lot of different things that we're looking at to make sure are deployed across our clients, and Liongard makes it a heck of a lot easier to do so.
Appreciate that, Todd. Yeah, it's always great. I appreciate you using some real world examples. I got plenty of them, but again, I'm just the biased Liongard guy that's getting on here and talk with you guys. So it's always good to see some of the partnership come to fruition, some success stories. So happy to share more of them, and happy to chat more, but and answer any other questions. So I'll hang on here for a little bit, and other than that, we can wrap it up if you'd like.
Yeah, there was one other question. I answered it in there, but figured in case anybody else had it. They said, beyond basic deployment, what advanced configuration options are available for fine-tuning Liongard's data collection, frequency, scope, impact, and target systems? So each inspector has its own customization as far as the frequency of the run. Some of it may be limited based on the source where they're pulling. So some, for instance, you could pull anywhere from 24 hours, 8 hours, hourly, and then now with their newer features for live events, for instance, some data from 365 is pulled, I think. Again, it's kind of limited on Microsoft, but like every 10 minutes. So it kind of depends on the source. And then beyond that, you can scope the alerts as granular as you'd like. You can scope the metrics as granular as you like. We would help you guys build all of that. If there's something very specific you want to be alerted on, or just track how it's changed or how it's configured, we can absolutely set that up. And then for those alerts, you can, again, customize as much as you want as far as the conditions. Like if it's a certain value alert, or send an email, or create a ticket, like there's options are endless as far as that goes. Anything, feel free to add on to that, Kyle.
No, I think you said it perfect. The metrics are really what's, running the queries to pull back. We have so much, it's crazy when you look at the data print and the JSON snapshots of all the data that we pull back from these systems. It could give some people a headache by looking at it, but the metrics that we can build out, and that Center can build out for anybody is kind of endless at the extent of what's available out there. So if there are questions around what can be surfaced, or concerns around things that you've been wanting to surface, then absolutely get with Center, and they'll be able to walk through that. And we've done some additional things to enhance the userability of creating metrics. And unless you're a James Path expert, or want to be. We've kind of moved into allowing some more plain text conversion into creating those metrics. So just enhancing the experience overall. But that was a really good answer, Todd. Absolutely.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think that just means you hit a home run on it, right? You just answered everything perfectly to where everybody's good.
That or nobody understood. But
Yeah.
if you fall into that bucket, let me know. Again, connect me on LinkedIn or shoot Todd a note. Happy to connect and further explain anything if you need to.
All right, guys. Thank you all very much for your time. Kyle, appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Center. Appreciate the opportunity. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.